Hi and welcome to the So Many Things YouTube channel. I'm Tim, your host. Here you get to sew with the boys, quilt with the boys, embroider with the boys, and of course, mostly have some fun, and you might learn something along the way. Stay tuned! Hi, here's another quick video using our Elna Experience 580. Once again, these buttons are going to be common on the 580, the 680, and some of our Janome counterparts in the Skyline series. We're going to talk about these buttons right over the needle on the face of the machine. These buttons right here. This bottom button is the start-stop button. It allows us to make the machine run or stop by pressing the button. There is one little catch. Can't have the foot control plugged in when you want to use that button. So remember, unplug the foot control, the start-stop button becomes active for you. Think of it as like a safety gauge. If I didn't want to use the button and I had my foot control plugged in, I don't have to worry about brushing against the button having the machine suddenly run because the foot control is plugged in. The other nice feature is that on my screen, it will also show me if my foot control is plugged in over here. There's an icon that lights up when my foot control is plugged in. Now right now, my foot control is not plugged in, so I don't have that little icon in the corner of my screen. So right above our start-stop button is the reverse button. It looks like an upside-down U with an arrow on it. Whenever we want to sew in reverse, we're going to press and hold that button. We also use that button to communicate with the machine when we've reached the end of the seam and we want to tell the machine to stop sewing. Usually when we're using our locking stitch or one of our lock-o-matic stitches, we don't hold that button to do so. We simply tap the button to tell the machine we've reached the end and for it to lock stitch and stop sewing. The next button is our lock stitch. That's the one with the circle and the dot in the middle. You'll also see that image on the screen of the machine. We talked about that in another video. This is a locking stitch to put little stitches in place. So your reverse is going to go forward and back. But your locking stitch is going to stop and take little stitches in place. About 4 or 5 little stitches. It might move the fabric a tiny bit, but it's not going to go forward and back like you do in a normal reverse when you're securing the beginning or ending of the seam. The next button above that is our up and down needle. Now, when my needle is up and I want it down, I simply tap the button. When my needle is down and I want it up, I tap the button. Don't need to use the hand wheel on the machines that have a needle up, needle down button. The advantage is that the machine will always stop in the proper position, being that if I want to thread the machine or I want to use the needle threader and I use the needle up and down button, it will stop in the proper up position for all of that activity. If I need the needle down to hold my fabric for a moment, I can simply tap that button. It will put the needle down into my fabric for me. One nice feature with our machine is I don't need to lower my presser foot to get my needle to drop. I also don't need to lower my presser foot to bring my needle up. So this is a nice feature. I can put my fabric under there and I can check where my needle is going to fall without having to put the foot up and down. Above that is our thread cutter button. This button allows us to manually cut the threads at any time. You simply stop sewing, touch that button, it'll cut the threads for you. Remember, it's going to stage the bobbin thread underneath, so you don't have to worry about bringing the bobbin thread up. If you want a longer tail to work with, then I don't suggest you use the automatic thread cutters. If you don't want to use the automatic cutter, you want to use the manual method, you would simply stop sewing, lift your presser foot, slide your fabric out towards the rear corner of the machine, and sweep up into the cutter that's located on the back upper side of the head of the machine. I almost forgot about our speed control. That's our tortoise and our hare. They're not racing, they're telling us we can slow the machine down or speed the machine up. By the way, our switch is active all the time on our Elnas and our Janomes, whether I'm using the start-stop button or the foot control. You have to keep in mind when using the foot control though, whatever speed I set this for, that's as fast as the machine is going to run with the foot control. The foot control does not override the maximum speed set by the speed control on the machine. So if this is set in the middle, it's only going to run at about half speed. I want full speed, I need to move that little lever all the way to the right, towards the hare. Now when I step on the pedal all the way down, because I'm a speedster, it will sew at full speed for me. This is also your speed control for sewing with the start-stop button. You might not want to start off with it at full speed when you're just getting comfortable with the machine using the start-stop button. You're definitely going to want to slow it down and take advantage of being able to control that speed a little bit more accurately with our tortoise and our hare. Let's talk about some of the screen information that's available on the Elna. First off, it's always going to show you what mode you're in. If you watched our other videos, we already talked about modes. This machine has 5 of them. That's how you select your different stitches. Next to that information is the stitch pattern number. You can see I'm on mode 1 with stitch pattern 01. Below that, we're showing you an indication of what the stitch pattern would look like. That oval opening is to represent the oval opening in your needle plate. So a straight stitch, center needle. That's what we're showing you here. We're also showing you the recommended foot being an A foot. That is the standard or zigzag or multi-purpose general foot that we use for most of our regular sewing. We also have stitch width control, which, because this is a straight stitch, it's going to be our needle placement. And then we have stitch length control. So if I like to sew with a little shorter stitch length, that 2.4, I can make it 2.2, simply by using the minus button underneath the stitch length indicator. If I'd like to move my needle left or right, I use the stitch width controls, which are actually now needle placement controls. So I'm going to be using, to the left is a minus. You can see my number's getting smaller, my needle is actually moving to the left. If I want to move it to the right, I use the plus side. This allows me to measure my seam allowance if I want to use the edge of the foot, so I can use a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, gauging it against the edge of the foot. Other information on the screen will appear as you select buttons. One of the big ones is this nice little button right here that has a dot and a pair of scissors. Now my scissors are active. I've just activated the lock stitch and automatic thread cut feature on this machine. That means when I get to the end of the stitch pattern, or when I want to stop, I simply tap my reverse key. The machine will stop sewing, it will do a little lock stitch for me, and then it will cut the threads automatically. Boy, doesn't that make it great. A nice easy feature. I don't have to do all these manual things. I just tell it when to stop and it takes care of the rest of it for me. I can also turn that feature off by touching that button again. On the right side, I have some other items that I can use. A twin needle safety. You see an icon here with twin needles on it. I have a mirror image key. This allows me to flip my patterns over. For example, I have a heart pattern with a point to the left. I want to make it to the right, so I can use the mirror image key to flip that pattern over. I like to refer to this next button here as back to the beginning. That's like rewinding. You're not really rewinding, you're just jumping back to the beginning of the pattern. Then I have two buttons down here, a C and an M. A C is for clear and an M is for memory. We'll talk about those in another video. Hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.